Israel. This video is for class of English 6, object number 9, and the topic is IPE, or International Political Economy. We are going to be answering the questions that were provided within the reading that was given. We are going to begin with question number 1, which says, what is IPE and why is it important? IPE stands for International Political Economy, and it's important because it differs within the balance between politics and economy. We then have to also evaluate the market functions, which cause different type of creations or the growth of different types of political thinkings that we are going to mention further on in the video. Okay, we're going to go into question number 2. Question number 2, give the core arguments made by three main theories of IPE: mercantilism, economic liberalism, and Marxism. Which theory, if any, is the best and why? Mercantilism, this theory is connected to the establishment of modern surveillance state during the 16th and 17th century. It was basically placed around the importance of the political aspects or the government to control every type of aspect inside of the market function. We then have economic liberalism, which emerged as a critique of the comprehensive political control and regulation of economy affairs that dominated European state-building in the 16th and 17th century. Economic liberalism is one of the most complete in my consideration because it had one of the apportation of one of the most important authors, we think, inside of the economic studies, which is Adam Smith, between 1723 and 1790. He believed that the economy regulated itself with no type of intervention on behalf of the government. Why is this? He believed that any type of fluency or fluctuation between the economic aspects will be regulated between the apportation or the intervention of the consumers themselves. Finally, we have Marxism, which was developed by the German philosopher and economist Karl Marx. He did not believe much in government intervention. What he did basically was divide the society into different types of aspects, which were on one hand the people who worked there, which he called them. There were two antagonist social class: the class of the bourgeoisie, which owned the means of production, and the other class of the proletariat, which owns the labor. He basically thought that there was some sort of balance between the person who will pay the people that used to give the labor, and so on. That way, give more growth or give more development to the economic aspects itself. On my own thought, I believe that the economic liberalism is one of the most complete, since they think that the government should not have that much of intervention inside of the market society. But I also believe that there are some sort of also solid thoughts within Marxism of him studying the different types of society that we used to live in, and the different type of separation between the ones who provided the jobs and the ones who paid them and the ones who worked them. So I believe that they both have mutual things in common, and they both add up to their thoughts to make them be more complete. Question number 3. Politics is in control of economics, say mercantilism. Economic is the basis for everything else, including politics, say Marxism. Which should we settle the dispute? Economic liberalism have been aware that in some cases the market may not work according to expectations of efficiency and mutual gain, called market failure. We have one of the authors, which is John Maynard Keynes, which clearly in the 20th century proposed to the market economy as a great benefit of people, but also entails potential evil of risk. As we all know, inside of the world of economy, there is potential risk whenever trying to invest or whenever trying to provide any type of intervention. They also speak about ideas paved the way of significantly rumored liberal theory based on a market economy, but with a considerable degree of state interference and direction. What does it explain us here? Basically, that they now begin to believe in a government intervention inside of the economic activity, but it was gradual upon what they were allowed to do and what they were not. specifying any type of regulations to be able to balance these type of interventions. Let's go on with question number 4. Economic liberals argue that economic exchange is a positive sum game. In the Marxist approach, the economy is a side of exploitation and inequality. Who is correct? In my consideration, I believe that in their time, all of them were correct. But now we are able to see and be able to study from a different type of perspective, which they did back then, but somehow it was not considered very solid. We have that the early economic liberals called for laissez-faire, which means freedom of the market from all kinds of political restrictions and regulations. This was some sort of neoliberalism or constructivism, which basically had that the state shall only set up those minimal underpinnings that are necessary for the market to function properly. As we mentioned before, they were now trying to regulate in a more bigger and wide camp of activity, which they were trying to, yes, now try to let the state interfere inside of the market activity, but only to regulate in specific law aspects what should or should not be done. Do security interests always have priority over economic matters, as mercantilism claims? No. They claim as distinguished between economic interest, security interest, and individual interest. What economic liberalism thinks is that they, yes, have two types of actors. They have on one hand the consumer, and they have the other hand the provider, which basically was their two main actors and do not believe in the security aspect to be considered as much as important as the two that were mentioned before. What happens here, they said that the consumers were going to be able to give life to the economic aspects by doing what they are supposed to, which is to consume, and they were going to demand some sort of follow-up or some sort of development on behalf of the other side of the producers. Compare Waltz and Wallerstein's who has the better theory. This I'm going to read and then compare them to what I consider on my own. The theories mentioned the following. From here the differences take over. Waltz's focus is on relative political military power in a condition of anarchy. Wallerstein's focus is the first and foremost economic power and capability, which is then connected with political power. Wallerstein analyzes the historical development of capitalism from 16th century onwards, putting economic first and politics second. Waltz analyzes the international balance of power in the 20th century, putting power politics first and economics second. So I believe that they somehow were correct, as mentioned before, in their time, between deciding if politics should be first and economics second, or on the other hand, economics first and politics second. But now, everything has changed in a very fast aspect or in a very fast way, because we are no longer living in a geopolitical world where the main importance is to take over more amount of territory. What we are looking forward now in this 21st century is over market power or economic power, which means that we are now taking in consideration that economics are more important or being put first than politics. Because now we can see as an example how China is looking forward into being one of the best positioned state nations in the world. Why? Because if he is well positioned inside of the chart of nations, he will then automatically have covered his military aspects, his economy aspects, and the society needs as well. So on behalf of my end, that will be everything. Thank you very much.